you cannot use material that you're allowed to use because we'd have to check that you're allowed to use it, and we don't want to do that. Hello, I'd like to share with you my recent experience of using public domain CC0 licensed samples in my original music and how it affects distribution companies and problems that you'll come up against. Hopefully, this will serve as a warning, or at least be very informative to anyone else that's thinking of using public domain samples in their original music. So, I wrote a song that used clips from uh, president speeches, American president speeches, George Bush and Donald Trump. Um, and they were public domain or had a Creative Commons Zero license, which, if you don't know what that is, basically you can apply it to your original work. And if you do that, it means it goes into the public domain, really, and it can be used by other people for commercial use with no problems. And obviously, public domain means no one has the copyright, so it's free for anyone to use. So my understanding of it is. So I have this song that I used these samples in, sent it to a distribution company. I won't name the company. They've been really good. Um, and they said, no, we hate it. You're not using it. Bugger off. All right. They didn't say that. They said no. They said, no, you can't have this. I'll just read some of the email exchanges that we've had. First of all, I believe the main problem with the release is to be the president's speeches. Sadly, we do not allow this as it may be considered as public domain, and you cannot have a license for this. So I responded, I don't understand. If the speeches are in the public domain, then they are available for me to use by definition. So what's the problem? They get back to me. Someone else steps in, someone higher up the food chain in the distribution company. Unfortunately, I have to advise you that at the moment we do not support distribution of content from public domain. That's all they said. Further correspondence, I'm afraid that the speeches cannot be used as the recording is in the public domain. I asked about the difference between the recording and the words, whether I could just use the words rather than the recording. I'm afraid that the speeches cannot be used as the recording is in public domain. So anyone can play it on a gathering, a school assembly, for example, but the speech text itself is copyrighted and belongs to the respective rights holder. So I respond, so the recordings are public domain, but the text isn't. That seems to be what they're saying, right? So now I go back to why won't you allow the recordings? If the recordings they've admitted are public domain, I'm using the recordings. Public domain means it's free to use, blah, blah, blah. Please explain. I don't get it. At this point, I find out there's actually another song that uses the same speech that I was wanting to use. So obviously, I'm really, really confused and annoyed at this point. They get back to me. I totally understand your point. Public domain material can be difficult to track and raise copyright issues at times. So content providers such as music distributors leave the choice to send this kind of content to stores to their own discretion. So I look into this further, look into other distribution companies, and I find out many of the online distribution companies are either rejecting or at least not entirely happy about accepting audio content that has been released under Creative Commons license or in the public domain, and are not accepting it into their distribution with YouTube's Content ID system. One, again, I won't name any of the distribution companies' names. I don't know if it really matters, but one of them says, due to the potential for copyright infringement concerns with public domain Creative Commons releases, we do not currently distribute music in the public domain or with the Creative Commons license for your own protection as well as ours. Another one says you'll be welcome to upload, release, and distribute this music through us, but please do not opt into our sync licensing YouTube monetization service. Only your 100% completely original non-Creative Commons compositions are eligible. Another one, we can monetize audio on YouTube, but not under Creative Commons license. Another one, at this time, we are not accepting public domain Creative Commons projects. We wish we could accommodate you, but retailers are beginning to reject these type of releases due to having to police potentially copyrighted material. I guess that sort of gets to the bottom of it. I've been trying to make sense of this, and what I can glean, hopefully what you can glean from this, is the policing. Retailers, because they have to police the potentially copyrighted material. So if it's in public domain, you can say it's in public domain, or it's got a CC0 license, but then the distributors or the digital music platforms would have to check, I suppose. They'd have to go into checking whether it really was, so that you weren't infringing any copyright laws or any copyright protection, which is a pain, and they don't want to do it. So I guess that's why. So it's just a blanket ban. You cannot use material that you're allowed to use, because we'd have to check that you're allowed to use it, and we don't want to do that. So that's it. That seems to be the way of it. If I were you and you think of doing this, don't bother. Just don't bother. It's ridiculous. I'm all for copyright as an artist and a creative person. You know, obviously it's a good thing, but this is mental. And I spent a long time on this, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do now with it. I don't know. Take the samples out, but it loses a whole element of what it's about. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. I hope that's been informative and helped anybody that has come across these issues or has them at the moment. Like I say, my advice is just don't bother.